I laughed when he found out the baby wasn't his. Now I'm alone raising a child while he moved on. Yeah, that's where this story ends up. But let me tell you how I got here. Because honestly, life has a way of getting messy when you're trying to keep too many secrets. I'm Kyra, and I was 24 when everything fell apart. Let me start by saying Michael was literally perfect on paper. We met at this tech startup where I was doing social media management, and he was a software developer. The kind of guy my mom would love, stable job, own apartment, actually had his life together. Not like the other guys I was used to. He was almost too good to be true, you know? Like he'd bring me coffee every morning without me asking, remember random things I mentioned weeks ago, and actually plan dates instead of just Netflix and chill. We moved fast. Like really fast. 6 months of dating and suddenly we're planning a wedding. I know what you're thinking, but when you know, right? Or at least that's what I told myself. The wedding was everything I'd pinned on Pinterest, and for a while, life was exactly what I thought I wanted. Michael got a promotion, we moved into this cute starter home, and everything seemed perfect. Then Jake came back into the picture. Jake was complicated. We had this on-again, off-again thing before Michael, the kind of situation where you never really know where you stand. He'd ghost for months, then show up with some sob story, and stupid me would always let him back in. When he reached out again, Michael and I were going through this weird phase. You know how it gets after the honeymoon period. Michael was working late a lot, and I was feeling kind of neglected. I told myself I was just going to meet Jake for coffee, get closure or whatever. But one coffee turned into drinks. Drinks turned into his apartment, and, well, you can figure out the rest. I didn't mean for it to become a thing, but suddenly I was juggling both of them. Michael was still perfect Michael, but Jake had this way of making me feel alive, even if he was totally unreliable. When I missed my period, I freaked out, like full-on panic attack in the bathroom at work. The timing was messy. Michael and I had been trying for a baby, but Jake and I had also been careless. I took the test alone in a Target bathroom because I couldn't wait to get home. When it came back positive, I sat there for what felt like hours, doing mental gymnastics with the dates. I convinced myself it had to be Michael's. We'd been actively trying, tracking ovulation, doing everything by the book. The fact that Jake and I had hooked up around the same time? I shoved that thought so far down it might as well have never existed. That night, I told Michael with this whole elaborate setup, tiny baby shoes in a gift box, his favorite dinner, the works. The look on his face. God, sometimes I still see it in my dreams. Pure joy, like his whole world just got better. The next day I blocked Jake's number and deleted all our messages. It was easier than dealing with the possibility. Besides, Michael was stable, successful, and actually wanted a family. He'd be an amazing dad. Jake could barely keep a job. It was better this way, I told myself. What Michael didn't know wouldn't hurt him, and our baby would have the perfect life I'd always wanted. Looking back now, I guess I was just really good at lying to myself. The first few months of pregnancy were like a masterclass in manipulation, if I'm being honest. I went all in on being the perfect wife. Started wearing the cute matching pajama sets Michael liked, made his favorite meals even when the morning sickness was killing me, posted all over Instagram about how blessed I was. I had to make sure everyone saw us as this perfect couple, expecting their perfect baby. The more people who bought into it, the easier it would be to keep my story straight. I threw myself into planning the nursery, dragging Michael to every baby store within 50 miles. I figured if I kept him focused on the future, he wouldn't think too hard about the past. Plus, watching him get excited about daddy-daughter dates and teaching our kid to code, it made me feel less guilty. Sometimes I could almost forget about Jake entirely. Almost. But then I'd wake up at 3 a.m., checking and rechecking my period tracking app, trying to convince myself the dates lined up the way I wanted them to. I'd catch myself studying Michael's features in his sleep, trying to imagine what features our baby would inherit. The more the baby bump grew, the more paranoid I got. I started dropping little comments about how the baby would definitely have Michael's eyes, his nose, his smile, anything to plant those suggestions early. The real panic set in when my mom started asking about family medical history for both sides. I had to get creative, making up stories about Michael's family history that I hoped would never come up again. Each little lie needed 3 more to support it, until I had this whole web of stories I could barely keep straight. Thank God for pregnancy brain. It became my excuse for every inconsistency. I thought I was in the clear when we hit the 2nd trimester. Michael was so invested, already talking to my belly every night, planning out college funds, the whole 9 yards. His parents bought us this ridiculously expensive stroller, and his mom was planning this huge baby shower. The guilt started eating at me a little less each time I saw how happy everyone was. Then Jake started posting these cryptic tweets. Nothing direct, just vague stuff about karma and truth coming out eventually. I couldn't block him because that would look suspicious, so I had to sit there watching, wondering if he knew. Every notification made my heart stop. I started having these nightmares where he showed up at my baby shower, announcing everything in front of everyone. The worst part? A tiny, messed up part of me was almost hoping the baby would look like Michael. Not just for the convenience. I actually wanted our kid to have his features, his smile, anything, to make this lie feel more like truth. When people would say things like, "I bet she'll have Michael's eyes," or "she'll definitely get his height," I'd smile and agree while my stomach tied itself in knots. Meanwhile, Michael was turning into this perfect dad-to-be. He downloaded all these parenting apps, started reading bedtime stories to my belly, even took a baby first aid class. Every sweet thing he did felt like another brick in the wall I was building between us. But I kept telling myself it was for the best. He would be an amazing father, and that's what mattered, right? The truth would just hurt everyone, and what good would that do? Besides, I'd convinced myself so thoroughly that I almost believed my own lies. Almost. Everything started unraveling at my baby shower, of all places. Michael's cousin Sarah, who's a labor and delivery nurse, started asking all these specific questions about my due date and conception timing. I could feel my face getting hot as I tried to keep my stories straight. But the real kicker? She mentioned something about how the baby's development timeline seemed a little off, based on what I'd been posting on social media. I saw the moment Michael's face changed. You know that look someone gets when they're putting puzzle pieces together? Yeah, that one. He didn't say anything at the party, but that night, he started going through our old text messages and calendar. I walked in on him comparing dates, and my heart nearly stopped. I went into full panic mode, pulling out every trick I had. "Babe, why are you acting so paranoid? Don't you trust me?" I made my voice crack just enough to sound hurt. When that didn't work, I switched to anger. "I can't believe you're doing this while I'm carrying your child. The stress isn't good for the baby." I even threw in some tears for good measure. Usually, that would be enough to make him feel guilty and back off. But this time was different. He just sat there, eerily calm, showing me screenshots he'd saved of my old social media posts I thought I'd deleted. Turns out, he'd been quietly documenting things for weeks. Every time my story about the conception date changed slightly, every inconsistency in my timeline, even some old photos that hadn't been completely scrubbed of Jake. I tried everything. Blamed pregnancy hormones for my confused dates. Claimed his cousin was just trying to cause drama because she was jealous of our perfect life. When he brought up Jake, I gaslit him so hard, acting completely offended that he would even remember that irrelevant person from my past. I cried about how he was ruining what should be the happiest time of our lives with his paranoia. "If you really think I would do that to you, then maybe you never really loved me at all." I threw at him, playing my ultimate card. I even called his mom, sobbing about how her son was stressing me out during my pregnancy with cruel accusations. She took my side at first, telling him to stop being ridiculous. I thought I had won. Then he said the words that made my blood run cold. "I already ordered a prenatal DNA test." I lost it. Started screaming about how he was trying to kill our baby with unnecessary medical procedures. Threatened to leave him if he didn't trust me enough to drop it. Swore up and down that I would never forgive him for this betrayal. I even called his best friend to tell him Michael was having some kind of mental breakdown and needed an intervention. But nothing worked. Nothing. For the first time since I'd known him, Michael wasn't budging. He just kept saying, calmly, infuriatingly calmly. If there's nothing to worry about, then the test shouldn't be a problem, right? I spent the next week throwing everything I had at him. Guilt trips about ruining our perfect family. Accusations about his own faithfulness. Even tried to seduce him into forgetting about the whole thing. But with each desperate attempt, I could see him pulling further away, watching me with these eyes that seemed to see right through every lie. The test was happening, and I was running out of plays. The 2 weeks waiting for those results were the longest of my life. Michael barely spoke to me, just went through the motions of daily life like a robot. I kept trying to act normal, like I wasn't dying inside every time my phone buzzed. The worst part was seeing his browser history full of searches about signs your wife is lying about pregnancy and how accurate are prenatal DNA tests. The day the results were supposed to come, I woke up sick to my stomach, and not from the pregnancy. Michael had taken the day off work, which should have told me everything I needed to know. When the email notification popped up on his phone, we were both in the kitchen. The silence was deafening as he opened it. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the stress finally breaking me, or maybe I'm just truly terrible. But when I saw his face crumble as he read the results, this nervous laugh just bubbled out of me. Not like a funny laugh, more like that hysterical sound you make when everything's falling apart and your brain just shorts out. That laugh changed everything. If there was any chance of salvaging anything, that stupid involuntary reaction killed it. Michael looked at me like he didn't even know who I was. "You're laughing?" His voice was so quiet, but it felt like he was screaming. "Our marriage is a lie, and you're laughing?" I tried to backtrack, suddenly desperate to explain. The words just started pouring out about Jake, about the timing, about how I'd convinced myself it could be Michael's. But each explanation just made everything worse. Every justification sounded more pathetic out loud than it had in my head. "I chose you," I said, like that would make it better. "I wanted you to be the father." "You chose for me?" The way he said it made me flinch. "You chose to lie to me every day for months. You chose to let me plan a future with a child that isn't mine. You chose to make me look like an idiot in front of everyone we know." I started crying then, real tears this time, not the manipulative ones I'd been using for months. Tried to grab his arm, tell him how sorry I was, how we could work through this. He just moved away from me like my touch burned him. The next hour was a blur. Michael methodically packing a bag while I followed him around the house, alternating between begging and getting angry. I tried every angle, how he'd already bonded with the baby, how we could still be a family, how Jake wasn't in the picture anyway. When none of that worked, I switched to threats. Said, tell everyone he abandoned his pregnant wife, that I'd make his life hell. He just looked at me with this empty expression and said, "You already have." The last thing he did before walking out was take down our wedding photo from the wall. Just unhooked it, placed it face down on the table, and walked out without looking back. I stood there in our perfect little house, surrounded by all the baby stuff he'd helped pick out, and realized I'd orchestrated my own worst nightmare. That night, in a moment of complete desperation, I even tried texting Jake. Told him about the baby, thinking maybe he'd step up. His response? "New phone, who's this?" followed by immediately blocking me. Classic Jake. I'd thrown away a good man for someone who couldn't even be bothered to acknowledge his own child. The divorce papers came faster than I expected. Michael must have had them ready, just waiting for those test results. His lawyer was brutal, had documentation of everything. Every changed date, every deleted post, every inconsistent story I'd told. All laid out in black and white, making me look exactly as calculating as I guess I was. I tried playing the victim card one last time. Posted this long, vague Facebook status about struggling through unexpected life changes and staying strong for my little one. You know, the kind of post that's supposed to make everyone ask what's wrong and take your side. But Michael had beaten me to it. He'd already told his family and our closest friends everything, with proof. The responses to my post were not what I wanted. People I thought were my friends started unfollowing me. The same ones who'd been gushing about my pregnancy updates and liking every baby bump photo suddenly couldn't distance themselves fast enough. My own sister told me she needed space to process. Even my mom, who usually takes my side no matter what, just sighed and said she'd raised me better than this. Meanwhile, Michael's life seemed to be going just fine without me. Mutual friends told me he'd moved in with his brother, gotten a therapist, even joined some gym. His sister posted pictures of him at some family gathering, smiling like he hadn't just had his whole life blown up. I kept checking his social media, even though each update felt like a punch to the gut. The real wake-up call came at my first solo prenatal appointment. Sitting there in that waiting room, watching all these happy couples cooing over ultrasound pictures, while I clutched my folder of single-parent resources the nurse had, thoughtfully, provided. The same nurse who'd gushed over Michael's enthusiasm at our previous appointments now barely made eye contact. I had to move back in with my parents when the lease on our house ended. Try explaining to the neighbors why you're packing up a nursery that was supposed to be perfect. My dad helped me move in silence, refusing to talk about anything except logistics. The disappointment in his eyes was almost worse than anger would have been. The final divorce hearing was the first time I'd seen Michael in person since he left. He looked good, like really good. Had this confidence about him that made me realize he'd already moved on, while I was still stuck replaying everything in my head. He didn't look at me once during the whole thing, even when I deliberately rested my hand on my very obvious baby bump. That night, I made the mistake of looking at his Instagram. He'd posted this really profound caption about closing chapters and learning to trust again. The comments were full of support, people calling him strong and resilient. Meanwhile, my last post had gotten exactly 3 likes, all from spam accounts. The worst part wasn't losing Michael, or the friends, or even my reputation. It was realizing that I'd created this whole mess trying to force a perfect life that was never real to begin with. I'd gotten so good at manipulating everyone else that I'd somehow managed to manipulate myself into believing my own lies. Now I was facing the reality of being a single mom, and not even in the sympathetic, my husband left me way. No, I was the villain in everyone's story, including my own. That was 8 months ago. My daughter Ava is 4 months old now, and she looks exactly like Jake, which is just the universe's way of making sure I can never forget what I did. Every time someone asks about her father, I have to decide which version of the story to tell. Usually I just say he's not in the picture, which feels like the understatement of the century. I still check Michael's social media more than I should. Last week, he posted pictures with some girl at a rooftop restaurant downtown. She's prettier than me, of course. The kind of girl who probably doesn't have any secrets. Their relationship status just went public, and the comments are full of people saying how he deserves happiness after everything he's been through. Like I'm just some cautionary tale in his story of finding true love. Sometimes I think about reaching out to him, trying to apologize again, now that I've had time to really process everything. But what would I even say? Sorry, I tried to trap you into raising another man's baby, and then laughed in your face when I got caught. There's no Hallmark card for that kind of apology. The thing is, I know what I did was wrong. I'm not completely delusional. But sometimes I still catch myself thinking that if he had just never asked for that DNA test, we could have been happy. We could have been that perfect family I wanted so badly. Ava would have had a dad who actually wanted her. And Michael never would have had to know the truth. Is it messed up that part of me still thinks that would have been better? Jake still has me blocked everywhere. Which is probably for the best. I heard through mutual friends that he moved to Austin for some startup job. He has no idea he has a daughter, and honestly, I prefer it that way. He wasn't father material anyway, that's why I picked Michael in the first place. I know how that sounds, but in my head, it made sense at the time. My mom keeps telling me I need to learn from this experience and grow as a person. But all I've really learned is that the truth always finds a way out, usually in the most humiliating way possible. She says I need therapy to work through my patterns of deception or whatever. But I don't see the point. No amount of therapy is going to change what happened or make people forget what I did. The really messed up part? Sometimes when I'm up at 3 a.m. feeding Ava, I find myself on Michael's profile, looking at pictures of him with his new girlfriend, and I get angry. Like, actually angry that he's happy without me. How ridiculous is that? I'm the one who ruined everything, but seeing him move on makes me feel like I got the raw end of the deal somehow. Everyone keeps saying I need to take accountability and stop playing the victim. But they don't understand what it's like to watch your whole life fall apart, even if you're the one who set it on fire. They don't know what it's like to lose everything because of one mistake. Okay, several mistakes, a whole series of calculated decisions that I somehow convinced myself were okay. So yeah, I laughed when he found out the baby wasn't his, and now I'm alone raising a child while he moved on. I know I'm supposed to say I've learned some profound lesson about honesty or whatever, but the truth is, I mostly just learned that next time, I need to be more careful about covering my tracks. Is that growth? Probably not, but at least I'm being honest about that much.